Hey, Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Eric Holter. I'm the CEO of Cuberis. We're a firm that focuses on web development, specifically in the museum industry. And I did kind of back my way into this niche. A little bit of a story there. I can tell maybe a bit of my history,
Yeah, go for it.
how I ended up there.
Yeah, go for it. Tell us kind of, are you an accidental agency owner? How'd you get started in this
Yeah,
crazy
well,
world?
Cuberis is my second agency. My first I started in 1995. I actually studied illustration at Rhode Island School of Design, graduated in 91. And my focus was letterpress printing and wood engraving. So I was doing things really old school. Did some freelance illustration. Was able to buy a press, so I was doing some letterpress printing, and ended up, letterpress printing doesn't pay a lot of the bills, so got a job in advertising, and that was like still with shooting stats, rubber cement, sending out for type, old mechanicals, Ruby Lith, and then by the time I was done in 1995, we were sending out, SideQuest discs or zip drives to production. So it was a very interesting time. And then in 1995, I started my first web company, which was perfect timing because everybody in the world needed a website. No one knew what it was or what to do with it. But I had tons of contacts in the advertising world. And every creative director I knew was like, please get to my office today because my clients tell me I need a website and I don't know what that is. So I started my first company. It grew very quickly to about 12 people or so. And then dot-com bubble burst happened. Then 9/11 happened and we barely survived. We went from 12 down to 5 very, very fast. And I had to learn how to actually run a business because up until that point, I went to art school and really knew nothing and had to figure that stuff out. So I did. We did survive. Company did grow again, and then I sold it to an employee in 2013. Which once I left, I started consulting, just helping other owners to learn how to run their business as I had. And my current company, Cuberis, was one of my clients, and the owner there was an incredibly talented creative director, but just didn't want to run the business. And so I came in, ran the business, and then purchased the company from him. So
Nice.
kind of backed into the current niche, but I've been enjoying it.
Nice. One of my first couple websites. So I got started by accident. I did a website designing a fake website called In Shit, making fun of NSYNC because one of my friends looked like Justin Timberlake. And then one of the fake band members got a DUI. And part of his community service, like the judge was asking him, like, what can you do? He's like, and he just thought, like, I can do websites. He couldn't do a website, but I could.
Yeah.
And so the judge made him do a website, which was me, do a website for a museum in Atlanta. I think the statutes of limitations have run out. So they can't go after us. But yeah, that was the only museum website I've ever designed. It was for my friend that got a DUI.
Yeah. And
So
that's wild.
So there's a lot to unpack there. So let's go back to kind of 95 to the bubble, the dot-com bubble. You said you kind of started going, like you took a hit there. Up until that point, were you getting business on referrals? Like what was the hit?
Yeah, back then it was easy. Everybody needed a website, and there were very few people doing it. So one of my first clients I picked up was Amica Insurance. They're a fairly national insurance company. And I was up in Rhode Island at the time, and they were a Rhode Island company. So I just literally sent them a cover letter saying, hey, I do websites. They had me come in and pitch the business. I did not know I was pitching up against IBM, but we got the business. So it was back then, man, the resources were few, the need was huge. So it was super easy. Dot-com bubble burst changed absolutely everything. And up until that point, people had overspent. Like it was so hyped. If you had a .com in your name, people wanted to throw venture capital at you. So it was just ridiculous. But once the bubble burst, everyone cooled. So they'd overspent. Expectations weren't met. So nobody really was interested in their website. So they let it sit fallow for 2 or 3 years. And then at 9/11, pretty much all business just came to a grinding halt after that. So it took about 3 or 4 years for the market to return. And in that period of time, I began reaching out to agencies. So our whole niche at that time was partnering with advertising agencies and design firms, helping them with their clients, building websites. There's some special needs there where, you don't want to intrude on an agency's other business. So we just exclusively did web stuff. We would never accept design work from an agency's client, that sort of thing. And that was really successful. That's how we continued to get business after that initial, it was just business everywhere in the first early days.
So it assumes that you were going after the big guys. And then when the crash happened, when the stupid big guys kind of pulled back, that's kind of what hurt a little bit. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, just almost everything stopped. We were, like I said, I had about 12 people on staff. I don't remember what our revenues were, but we were going gangbusters and just literally, it cooled after the dot-com bubble burst. We didn't have a lot of venture capital clients. So we weren't, it's not that our clients went away. We had a lot of brick and mortar small companies. So it wasn't so much that, it was just that everybody cooled on their expectations. They didn't want to spend because they'd overspent previously. So the whole industry cooled after that period of time, for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, the dot-com era, I went through that. We actually grew, but we were going after different clients. And I think it was probably easier for us to grow because we started out in 99 designing $500 websites, $1,000 websites. And so we were going after the small mom and pop for a while. And the dot-com era really reminds me of this era with the AI. It's like, oh, you got AI, you have a little bit of AI. Like I laugh at some of these email marketing softwares. They're like, yeah, we have AI in it. I'm like, really? Like it's complete bullshit. It's crap. And they're just trying to kind of add on that kind of trend. And maybe they do have a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not. And so, the lesson I took away from that is when there's a hot market and things are around a certain, trend, yes, you can jump on that, but just be careful going after the biggest companies, like really diversity, because that's what allowed us. We were able to grow in the dot-com. We were able to grow after 9/11, 08, because we had a diversity. Now, in the very beginning, we had all small clients. So it was like, hey, like, need a website, right? Like it was so easy.
Yeah.
It was too easy almost. But then in 08, we had some really big clients and we had some medium size. We had some small clients that allowed us to get through. So that's kind of a lesson I took. I do want to talk about, you sold to an employee. So why did you sell? Is kind of the first question.
Yeah. Again, that was somewhat accidental. So in 2000, fortunately, right before everything went badly for us, I had hired David Baker, who's a consultant in the industry, and I kind of got my education on how to manage an actual business, not just do good work. And so I'd kind of gotten framed up right. And one of his pieces of advice was run your company in such a way that if you ever wanted to sell it, you could, which meant putting people in key places, making sure that the company didn't depend on me day to day, but that I could add value, but not be essential to the work. And I didn't take that advice because I wanted to sell it. I just thought it made sense. It was good advice. So I did that. And this employee ultimately, he was interested in doing sales and in kind of managing staff. And so I just trained him and coached him. And by 2007, 2008, I didn't really have much to do. I'd come into work and I'd do some research, maybe write a newsletter. What's this new Facebook thing? And I'd write a newsletter about that and send it out. But day to day, I wasn't involved in the operations. And if you're an entrepreneur and you don't have a lot of work to do, it's annoying. It's not a very thriving experience. So I basically kept finding myself wanting to do new things with the company and turn it in directions that I'd explore it. I'd come up with a plan and I was, what, if I do that, it's only going to divert what's already working. We were hitting on all cylinders at that point in time. We had crazy pipeline. We were turning down work. So why fix something that's not broken. So I decided, rather than trying to scratch my entrepreneurial itch by reforming a company that was working, why not just sell it and move on and do something else? So that's what I ultimately decided to do. And this employee, Mark O'Brien, he really wanted to buy it. And so we worked out a deal for him to acquire. It took, about 5 years to actually complete the deal. But we were able to successfully do that.
And so you approached him saying, hey, I no longer want to run this business. Would you like to buy it? How did that conversation go?
Yeah, we had talked about ownership a bunch of times. Early on, I was pretty reluctant to either sell shares or equity, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense in that business model for someone who only has, a minority stake in it. So that route didn't go very well. It's kind of one of those things, you either have to sell it or not. Like, taking on just equity partners is not a real great viable option in most of these cases. So once I had made that decision, I approached him, and he was very interested. Obviously didn't, know how he was going to do that. How do you go from someone making a salary to purchasing the whole company? And obviously it did take a while, but David Baker was really helpful in helping us figure out a model that would do that. What
was the model? Was it owner's financing?
It had an element of that. So first there was, it was about a 5-year. I think we did it and ended up doing it in 4, but the plan was, I believe, for a 5-year buyout. So we had a valuation, and essentially I increased his salary to some degree, and he would then take a chunk of his salary and buy shares. Each month he'd buy more shares. And we also had a distribution schedule. So over that 5-year period, he would be buying shares on a schedule. His equity would be going up. So all the distributions would slowly increase to his side, and he would keep throwing that money back into those share purchases. And that would bring us to, I think it was like a 45% ownership, and then once we hit that point, then he had to buy out the rest all at once.
And he would do that through like a loan?
Yeah, he would do that through a loan. It was either going to be, I would set up the loan. In the end, he was able to get a loan from a bank and buy me out for the remaining 55% at the end.
How long did it take? Because I know people are curious about how long would it take for him to get to 45%? Was that like 2 years?
Like I said, I think it took about 4. And that's in part because we kicked this whole thing off in 2008, which was not a good time to do that. And the company did have maybe like a year in there where it wasn't doing great as a result of the economy. So we probably could have gotten it done in 3, but it ended up taking 4. We had planned like a 5 at most, could have done 3, ended up being 4.
Okay.
But yeah.
And then I like that model because you're still in control up until he has the money to buy the whole thing out.
Right.
Right. Is that correct? And so were you still working in the business, or did you kind of go?
To a very minor degree. I'd already trained him. So like, honestly, I didn't need to be there. So part of the agreement was both, the initial valuation, the buying of shares, and then there was also a consulting piece. So I left employment with the company. But so while this transition was in place, I was employed as a consultant to the company. So that also gave me additional revenue in the buyout, unrelated to the actual, valuation of the company. And, I would be available. So whatever he needed to talk, we'd have at least once a week, we'd have a meeting and talk things through. But if there were ever any issues, I would be there to help. And so I kind of coached along during that period as a consultant to the company.
Was the consulting fee less than your salary used to be, or more?
Let's see. It was probably about equivalent. I don't remember exactly.
I'm just trying to give people idea, right? Like, because there's some people who are listening, be like, I never thought about that. Like, how could I do that? How can I sell to one of my employees, and saying, look, I'm going to increase your salary a little bit. And then you can kind of put that into buying shares based on the valuation. Seems like there's no earnout. And then when you hit the 45%, which you still control. So
right.
You could honestly, like, I presume you were acting as like the chairman. So if you did start buying ownership and then he started doing something stupid, you could say you're fired as an employee. You still own this amount of shares. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had a we had, worked through some lawyers to kind of try to talk through those contingencies. I couldn't just let him go at will. There would have to be some kind of cause and process and so forth. So we had to talk through all of those, all those aspects. But yeah, you just have to be able to take your time with the process in order to make that work.
And did you feel that, thinking back, did you feel that at that time you were holding the company back? Is that why you were kind of not doing much in the agency?
I think that so Mark was handling all of the sales at that point. I trained him that. I had project managers in place to handle the actual workflow. And aside from coaching Mark, and I wrote these newsletters every month, a lot of the clients at that point said, does this guy Eric really exist, or is he just like a brand figment? Because they never even met me for those years. And so it just worked out that way. I mean, I don't today with my current company, I'm not planning on selling it. I really like doing the work. Another thing that changed in that regard is back then, I was an artist. I didn't have a programming background, so I couldn't do the work. I could do some design work potentially, but I couldn't actually take a project and do it. I had to hand it off to programmers and a whole process. Whereas today, I'm back in a place where I actually can talk to my clients. I can strategize with them. I can work with design and then actually build it and work with them. So it's a different situation. It engages me a lot more than back then where I was running the company, but not involved in the actual work product.
Is there anything looking back you would have changed? Would you, knowing everything you know now, would you have still sold to the employee?
Yeah, I think so. I had to make, there was a moment in time where I had to make a decision that either I needed to be in the driver's seat and in the business, or I needed to be out of the business. And at that point in time, I didn't want to be back in the driver's seat. Also, I felt like Mark was doing an incredible job. Why displace him when he was thriving? And I did have these other ambitions. I wanted to consult. I wanted to help be more kind of strategic, help other people. So my attention was shifting, and I also had to think through, well, why don't I just sell them part of the company and still keep ownership of it? And I think the reality is, and this was also something David Baker mentioned, was that for someone like Mark, if he doesn't have a controlling interest and he's running the whole thing and doesn't need me, why would he stay? Right. Mm-hmm. If he can do all that on his own. And I think there's a reality that if you're going to be the primary principal owner operator and you don't own it, or at least have a controlling interest, it's going to collide with your motivations.
Yeah. I look at it as, because I got to the point several times in a lot of the businesses that I've run, including the one that I sold, and I felt kind of the same way. I felt like coming into the office and the creative meetings, they don't need me. They don't need me in the development meetings. They don't need me in the marketing meetings. They don't need me in the sales. But then something hit me one day and I go, holy cow, I've created the ultimate business where I can pick and choose to do the things that I love. I'm not in the business. I actually own the business. The business doesn't own me. And then I realized there was kind of 5 roles that I needed to kind of go into to transform from an owner to a CEO. The one was setting the vision and communicating it to the team so they can make the decisions, right? For example, with agency mastery, our whole goal, our North Star is very easy: to be a resource I wish I had when I ran the first agency.
Right.
Whole team, they can call me on my bullshit if I make a bad decision, right? They're like, hey, that doesn't match up with this. I'm like, okay, yep, right. Go back. Second one, be the face of the organization, right? Like what you were doing with the newsletter. Yeah. Third, build the key relationships. As owners, as CEOs, we can build relationships better than anybody else in most cases. Right? Understand the KPIs and then coach and mentor our leadership team. And then that's what gave me the energy again, because I was like you. I was like, what the hell am I coming into the office? Like, I'm just sitting here. I literally remember I was in the office. I love model trains. And I finished my basement in the house in Georgia, and I was designing this model railroad because I just wanted to look busy, but
Yeah.
I wasn't adding to the company.
Yep.
And looking back, I'm like, damn it, if I knew those 5 roles, right? Because I look at selling an agency, if you know exactly what you're going to do next, because everyone thinks, I want to get to a point where I can sell the agency and then get the accolades. But I was depressed after I sold. Like, I had all the money in the world, but I was completely depressed. Went to a Tony Robbins event, walked on fire, stitcher shit. I was like, what? And then, you know, and looking back, I was like, I would only sold if I knew exactly what I was going to do next.
Yeah, 100%. Because you have to do something. We're supposed to be working. We're made to do work, meaningful work.
Exactly.
And yeah, you sell and you have money, but that doesn't change. You still need to go to work every day and do something. And it's part of why I sold was in my role. Like you did your train set. I was refurbishing a shed in my backyard and building a swing set for the kids. It's like, okay, this is great, but I'm not a carpenter. I don't want to be a carpenter. I'm not really good at this. I want to be building businesses. I want to be doing entrepreneurial stuff. And in the role that I was in at that company, that wasn't happening, which is why I decided, okay, sell and now go do your entrepreneurial thing, which did lead to ultimately the next company, which I then turned around and bought and started that cycle. And now it's like, I like the work I'm doing. I enjoy the days and I'm making lots of profit. And why would I want to move on from that? If it's doing what I need to do, I can do other things like Monocle, the one we just launched. I can help another person start that up and reproduce it that way. But in terms of my personal practice, I've got work I like to do, plenty of profit in it, and no need to change that up.
Very cool. Eric, in wrapping up, I know you designed or wrote a book. Tell us like really quick about it and where people can go.
Yeah. It's called Blazing the Freelance Trail. You can get it on Amazon, and it's essentially a roadmap, a trail map for younger creatives that are just getting started. So all the stories we were just talking about of things in the past, the mistakes we made, things we didn't know. There's no reason why creatives have to learn from the school of hard knocks. I think it's unfortunate that most art schools don't teach business, more than, really, really basic stuff. And so this is a book that just walks through 5 different principles: money, minutes, management, marketing, and motivation. And it explains how those all feed in to running a creative company. And then the second half of the book gives like particulars, how do you actually go about doing those 5 things. And again, it's written to someone just getting started so that hopefully if somebody reads it and follows some of that advice, they can do this intentionally and not just learn from trial and error, which is a very painful way to learn these lessons.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, everyone go check out the book. And if you guys enjoyed this episode and you really want to take your agency to the next level, one of the things that we've done here at Agency Mastery is create events and experiences. And going back to what I was telling all of you about the North Star of creating something I wish I had, we just got out of doing our agency experience. And when you can connect with amazing agency leaders, you'll gain clarity. And when you gain clarity, then you're going to have confidence in order to really execute and have focus, because you know what you're going to execute on in order to get to the place where you want to go. So if you guys want to come to an event of ours in the near future, make sure you go to agencymastery360.com/events, or just go to our website. You'll see the event link. Go there, check out what we got there, and hopefully we'll see you at one of our events. And until next time, have a swank day. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.